Poppy, come on up here. You've heard this lecture so far. Do you think that all the individuals out there in the world watching on television can actually change their lives by doing the things that Lacey has suggested? Yes, yes, they can. Poppy agrees. I'm glad you're with us on board. And now we want to have a discussion, Poppy, about your own home turf here, PCC, and we're very honored to have the speaker today, the president, retired Linda Gerber, president of the Sylvania campus, and the tremendous leader in sustainability for PCC over many, many years, discuss the PC sustainability here at PCC.
Thank you, Toby. Thank you, Poppy. It's always a pleasure to share a stage with the two of you. Let's see, I think I have a clicker.
Yeah, here's the clicker.
And can you help,
here, let me get
can
to
you
it.
help
Let
me,
get
Toby,
to it. Yeah,
get into
I'll
my PowerPoint?
Yes.
You know, several people, starting with Dr. Brown this morning and ending with Lacey just before me, talked about the power of individuals. And one of the things that I want to talk about, let's see.
Oh, you point.
Yes, okay. One of the things that I'm going to start my talk with is help you recall two individuals that really made a huge difference in the past, during times in which in this case, in both of these cases, it was the chemical industry, were promoting and disseminating mistruths about the consequences of certain chemicals that were being industrialized in this country. And in both of these cases, one single individual had the courage to buck the system, to do the research, and to communicate and act in order to, I don't think it's too difficult to comprehend that, in fact, that they did save the world, which is what Toby's talking about now. So, how many people remember Rachel Carson's?
Yeah.
Yes. All right. My daughter is an 8th grade science teacher and a biology major, and I was talking to her about Rachel Carson's just a couple of days ago, and she said, you know, I know the name, but I don't really know what she did. So just in case you don't, Rachel Carson's was a biologist, and she was studying the East Coast seabird life, and she noticed that there was a precipitous decline in the population of seabirds on the East Coast, and that led her to do research in an area that was not really her area of expertise, and so she switched her research to chemistry, and she discovered that DDT was in fact destroying the eggs of birds, and the more she learned about the ecology and the disruptive impact of pesticides, the more disturbed she got, and she started to communicate and to act on her findings. And of course, the response that she got from the industry and the media was very dismissive. She was called hysterical, she was called a liar, but eventually, as scientists do, they replicated her research and studies and found that what she had discovered was true. And she was a terrific writer and publicized her findings in a book called Silent Spring, and that became a very popular book and led to demands by the population of the United States, by our citizens, to do something about pesticides and regulating pesticides, and led directly to the regulation of pesticides being removed from the Department of Agriculture and moved into a newly created arm of the government called the Environmental Protection Agency. So what Rachel Carson's did for the world was to remind us that we are part of nature and that anything that we do that disrupts nature is a war against ourselves. And the consequences of her publicizing Silent Spring have rolled down in very beneficial ways from the date in 1962 when that publication came out. Dr. F. Sherwood Rowland, a chemist, was recently noted. New Yorker magazine had an editorial about Dr. Rowland and did say he's one of the few people who has saved the world. And Dr. Malino, of course, has been working on the ozone layer, but it was Dr. Rowlands in the early 70s who discovered that chlorofluorocarbons, which were used in refrigerants and aerosol cans and cleaning solvents and all kinds of things, were in fact disrupting the ozone layer. And I have to say, the response to his discovery was very similar to the response to Rachel Carson's. He was pretty much shunned by his fellow academics in the world of science. And the Aerosol News, which was the trade publication for the aerosol industry, actually claimed that he was a KGB agent and with the intent of destroying capitalism. But once again, scientists began to replicate his findings, and he was eventually awarded the Nobel Prize, so he was vindicated. Unfortunately, Rachel Carson's died from breast cancer not too long after Silent Spring was published. And, you know, we all have our suspicions that maybe breast cancer is a result of the contact that we have with chemicals that are not exactly natural to our environment. Well, Portland Community College believes that institutions of higher education are responsible for not only creating new knowledge, but also for communicating it and teaching it to our students. And one of the best ways that we can do that is by modeling good citizenship. We do have a climate action plan that is actually has the same goals, I think, as the city of Portland's. You're going to hear about those soon, but Dr. Brown discussed this briefly. Based on our 2006 levels of greenhouse gas emissions, we intended to reduce our emissions 10% by 2012, 40% by 2030, and 80% by 2050. So how are we doing? Pretty darn well. We have, if you look at the full-time student equivalency, in other words, the number of students that we have in the college, we have reduced our metric ton of CO2s by 38%. If you look at our square footage, we have reduced by 13%. So we are on course if you look at those numbers. We are not on course if you look at just the gross production. And we've had this incredible increase in population of students and an incredible increase of square footage. So we really need to look at all three to analyze how well we're doing. When we talk about greenhouse gas emissions here at Portland Community College, we talk about three different kinds of emissions. And the first is called Scope 1 emissions, and it includes natural gas and district fleet, and refrigerants and stationary fuels. And we have been successful in reducing those emissions by over 50% since 2006. And those are emissions that we have quite a bit of control over, and can use technology and behavior change, et cetera, to attack the problem. Wait a minute, let's keep going here. Why am I stuck?
You might have to point it over here.
There we go. Just a few, I mean, we've done a number of things, but a few of the things that we've done is we have installed new boilers. This whole campus is heated by hot water. And so we had an old, very inefficient boiler that we converted to sequential boilers. And just that change alone, one thing, reduced our entire district emissions of Scope 1 emissions by 52%. And we also have a swimming pool on this campus that gobbled up a lot of energy in producing the heat needed to keep the water warm for swimmers. And we have employed a lot of strategies, including fuel cell and some technology to reuse the heat that is emitted into the air from the pool. That's all now recaptured and reused to reheat the water. So those are just two of the changes that we've made. There's a picture of our old boiler on the left, and these are really tiny little boiler things. They are not in proportion there. And here's some of the technology from the swimming pool. I would invite anybody who wants to come and have a tour to just, call Toby, I guess, because I'm retired. But it's fascinating and been very effective. Our Scope 2 emissions are purchased electricity. And of course, we purchase some of our electricity from Boardman, so it's very hard to control, but we have been successful in reducing those emissions. This is the gross emissions by 0.6% since 2006. And then we have just a little bit about how we did that. We have retrofitted all of our lighting and to LED lighting, and are now using occupancy sensors throughout the district. And we have installed solar. We have a ground array at Rock Creek, and we have new construction at both Newburgh and Willow Creek centers that have PV on the roof. Our Newburgh Center is a net zero building, so it is so far in the last 6 months as we've been tracking it, been producing all the energy that it uses via its PV array. And there you have some familiar looking things, huh? Scope 3 emissions are supply chain and solid waste. And as Dr. Brown said, PCC is probably the only community college in the country that is tracking our supply chain emissions. These have increased since 2006 because we really have not implemented a strategy to reduce supply chain emissions. But just the fact that we figured out how to track them is a major accomplishment. We will be, that is in our newly revised climate action plan, that is one of the chief goals, is to, now that we know how to track the emissions from supply chain, we can attack the problem of purchasing less. That's the first strategy. And then when we do purchasing items that are less detrimental in terms of creating carbon emissions. So we have, as I said, developed the methodology for tracking supply chain emissions. We've also increased our transportation. We have college shuttles that run around the district and take students from one campus to another so that they do not have to drive cars. We have low emission buses that we're using. We've installed electric hand dryers that's really saving, I think, 70 tons of paper towels every year. And we have been invited to join the Founders Circle. It's a national sustainability purchasing leadership council that is not just educational, includes industry, big industry players, and government entities to work on this supply chain issue at the national level. In terms of teaching students, we have a very, very active group of faculty here that are dedicated to making sure that students leave this college with enough information to make educated decisions about what they hear regarding climate change and to act on what they learn regarding climate change. So far we have our green, all of our courses have outcomes. And for those courses that have green outcomes, they have now been identified and they're being flagged or will be flagged in the college schedule so students can find courses. And trust me, our students, as I think students across the country, are very interested in learning about sustainability. We have initiated a Greens Sustainability Focus Award so that students can actually get an academic award for taking a number of courses related to sustainability. We have received a grant from the National Science Foundation, and for a number of years now we've been teaching high school, college, and even university teachers around the region how to integrate sustainability curriculum into their courses. And that's really focusing on career and technical education courses. And then we have launched here at PCC a model for integrating sustainability curriculum into our general education courses, our transfer courses. This is a list of all of the things that organizationally we have done in order to be as successful as we are in the area of sustainability. I think this is going to be posted, so I'm not going to go through each one of these kind of, I guess I would call it benchmark phases that we've had. But I would want to point out that from my point of view, the most important thing that has happened at this college related to sustainability is when our board of directors developed and adopted a policy on sustainability. And it's the B707 policy. And basically it says that Portland Community College will be a leader in sustainability and will model good practices in sustainability. And from that policy change at the board level, all else has flowed. The board is our boss, and so we pay attention. So PCC celebrates Earth Day every day. This is just one day out of the 360 odd days that we have. And yes, we can do it. Do we have naysayers? Yes. Do we have people who deny this is a problem? Yes. But the majority of faculty, staff, and students at PCC recognize it for the problem it is and are acting on it.
Linda, let me ask you one question. I know that the governor has designated our campus as a model campus for the future in a program called Net Zero.
Yes.
And I know we're making progress towards that. What is that goal?
Well, the goal is to create by 2030 a net zero campus for this campus. And the reason that it's important, and I think the reason the governor has selected it as an important goal, and this was an interesting fact for me to discover, between 1960 and 1974, there was a community college built in the United States, one every 2 weeks. So PCC's Sylvania campus was built during an era when we didn't think about sustainability. We thought about building the cheapest building we could so that we could teach the most students possible. So here we are, 50 years later, 40 years later, and we have a very large facility using an enormous amount of energy that is not in any way sustainable. I mean, there was nothing about this campus. And so the idea was, if we could take this very typical campus and move it to a net zero where we're not using any energy other than the energy that we produce, it would be a model for the country and for all of those hundreds of community colleges that were built. We are on our way, and the first phase is to reduce as much as possible the energy that we consume. The second phase will be to create as much energy as we need then to fill the gap, the delta.
Thank you, Lindy.
Thank you.
Poppy, do you think that we can make your habitat right here in the forest of Mountain Park, do you think we can make it net zero by 2030? Yes, we can.